Hello everyone, a bit of a different video today, also with animation, about a gift that is the first gift I receive ever since I started Schwerpunkt for Schwerpunkt, and that is incredibly felt by a fan who donated me these coins, as you can see, very beautiful. There are original ancient coins, respectively, as we will see now, the 2nd century BC and the 5th and 6th century AD, the smaller ones. And first of all, I have no words to thank this person. He said he did it because of all the videos I make, but I don't think this is a right equivalent, because to me this money are much more worthy than what I do in here, and they have they have an amazing importance to me, and I can barely explain what it feels to just have them here with me. I basically am not a collector, an ancient money collector. This is the first time, in fact, I own such objects, and let me tell you, is an amazing feeling. I didn't, when I go around museums, I look at coins. Many people find them boring. I personally developed over time some attraction towards them. If anything, not just because of their historical value, of course, but also because of, artistically speaking, let's be honest about these. They are beautiful even to watch, and yet I would never think I would own any of them. And yet this was an amazing, how many times I said, even people I know in front of this coins, just imagine what to have them, or to, the fact that they're so old, if only they could speak, right, how many stories they could tell, and they have an amazing history, and that's what this, for me, assumes I don't even know how to say that, but a sort of spiritual dimension. Like, this is why I love history so much, why we love history so much. We follow this channel, including my donor. So, I mean, okay, he was not a complete surprise, because I knew he collected coins, and I knew that he would send me something. And I said, okay, well, this is going to be coins. In fact, it was like that. But aside from that, I was amazed by the true feeling that I experienced when I got these objects with me, because I felt extremely moved by it, and especially knowing eventually the history behind them, because to me is simply, I don't know, just as I just said, these things touch me really a lot, and I have that's why I have no words to thank this person, and he knows that. So this is just for telling to you, and so collectively thanking this person, who is, and I thought generally, because eventually I spoke with him, I was never done it before, I thought he was an archaeologist, honestly, or a numismatist, or however some he had followed some education about. He said it turns out he's an amateur, and as many amateurs, he came to be through this evidently great passion, or what you can easily call as an expert. In fact, he provided me with extremely valuable information about these coins, and that's amazing, right? So never think that, I mean, in order to know things well, or to be an expert in something, you necessarily have to make that path, or to take that, or to make to make that study. You can develop your interests, even polymathically, in many directions. And this one is definitely also a great one. I mean, numismatics is very complicated. It takes brain to understand it, and I'm terribly ignorant about it. So today I will provide some information, partly given by the same donor, partly found it but myself, and I hope I will surely make a lot of mistakes throughout the video. So, but I think it's worth it just to watch the coin, and to remain in awe, let's say, about it. And so this one I'm having here is a Roman denarius, an authentic Roman denarius from 132 BC. So the same year. This and the amazing thing of this, and I rip it immediately from my chest. This coin was minted nowhere else than the Arx Capitolina itself, right, in the mints of the temple of Iuno Moneta, right. And this is amazing. This comes straight from the heart of Rome, and I mean, wow, no words. This is really incredible. We'll talk a little bit about the denarius as a coin later, but just to say, this is 3.89 grams. So it's more or less exactly what a denarius should be. The denarius wasn't originally all of this. It originally was like 4.5 grams. Then eventually was brought down to this by the during 2nd century BC, and it has, I think, a diameter here. I don't really know, but I think it's like 2 centimeters, right? A bit less, like probably 19 millimeters, something like that. And here, just what you can see here is, I just learned, by the way, that the correct terminology about the 2 flat faces of the coins is not like face and back, very primitively speaking, that they're called obverse and reverse. So the obverse is the front face, practically, and here you can see basically Rome herself, the helmeted head of Rome. And looks, I don't know, like a pseudo-Arctic helmet with wings that represent, of course, the winged glory of the Aryan religions. There seems to be a crest that I'm not entirely sure whether it symbolizes a specific creature. I think there are like griffin crests or something like that. I don't know if this is actually it. I don't know how it was represented. And you can see here also the behind the head the writing gem, right? That at the time it would be gem actually, because it refers to Marcus Aburius M.F. Geminus. Like in the Pronunciatio Restituta, like in 2nd century BC, they would have spoken that point. And who was this guy? Well, he basically was the monetary magistrate of 132 BC. So who controlled, as we will see now in a while, the mint on the Capitol Hill, and he was part of this. There were other relatives who were into this, they covered this office, but we'll see it later. And on the reverse, instead, you can see this radiate sol, so the sun, basically, in a quadriga, whip in right hand, reins in left hand, right? And below you can read clearly the M. Aburi. Yeah, there is basically written like the AB in legate and VR in legate, which is typical of the Roman, let's say, joints of the writing this time, and to save space in here, evidently. And then below in exerg, this is also a term I found, the writing Roma, right? So Rome, and the name of Rome. This is really beautiful, even just to watch. It's relatively common coin. I mean, there are lots around. Nevertheless, they all differ a little bit. I mean, the donor told me that basically from the same dice that gave the engraving, that they could cast like they could mint something like 10,000 coins or even more. I don't remember if it was 10,000, 15,000. But there is a bit of a difference, and this difference exists mainly in the fact that they are, the engraving here, I don't know what's the correct term, is done in different ways, and also the monetary magistrates change it, for example, so they put different names. So this is what differentiates them, and of course over time. And here we are in a republican phase in which the figure of Rome is preeminent, right? There are not in the future way more than just the name of the magistrates will appear, but just also the faces. Naturally, that's kind of interesting, because it tells you how Roman politics and society were changing, right? Relatively to the Denarius, just some word about it. As you know, it's as we were saying before, it's through the Denarius you can trace basically Roman history, like through to the monetary system and currency policies. You can look at the history of the empire, and as we see, it's a relatively small coin, and also one of the most used in absolute terms in Roman history. And the name comes, in fact, from the term deni, which means the 10th of a series, which is the same root of the English 10 and of the German 10, and it originally indicated 10 axes, right? That is basically the bronze coin that was in use, that corresponded to originally to previous measures of precious metal during the Republic and the Empire, and this was the original value of the coin initially. Eventually, as we will see now, it will get higher. That was indicated by the X mark, so this is the Roman numeral for 10 in the first emissions, right? And I frankly don't know where the first denarii were actually minted. It was, if I'm not wrong, surely in the 3rd century BC, but I don't really know why. I think like the first examples, but I can't easily be wrong, like are found from the 2nd Punic War onwards, from like 211 BC, but it existed before somewhere. I read maybe the 60s of the 3rd century, I don't remember. And the first ones weighed, as we were saying before, 4.5 grams, right? When it was 1/72 of a Roman pound, and they presented on the obverse the helmet head of Rome, and on the reverse the Oscuri on horseback with the legend Roma, right? Then eventually the denarius the denarius weight was lowered to 3.9 grams, which is the one we have here. And towards 142 BC, so just 10 years before this was minted, the specific one was minted, the value of the denarius was posed at 16 asses. So the difference was indicated also through the change of the symbol, that from X became like XVI, which is the numeral for 16. That was eventually extended in a monogram. All right, and this new denarii initially we've said it, they weighed 3.9 grams. They presented on the obverse the head of Rome, while on the reverse the she-wolf with Romulus and Remus. They were milking, and then other symbols usually in the search the legend Roma always, right? And this way basically remained unchanged until the Nero's reform, that is in 64 AD, that basically would last in the system that it's set up to Diocletian, right? And Nero, contrarily was what people think it was one of the in absolute terms, one of the greatest emperors the Roman Empire ever had. And his monetary policy was like one of the most successful ones in the entire history. And this included the lowering of the denarius to 3.4 grams. It was a reform essentially for favoring the middle classes, right? And against the trying to hit the senatorial luxus that instead was more favored by the golden coins. So the first minted denarii didn't show any indication that could relate them to the monetary magistrate that had taken care of the emission, right? This money are fundamentally still called the anonymous denarii because in numismatics they don't have the name of them. And here instead with this coin we are already in this second phase where on the coin started to being displayed certain symbols that allowed to identify in some way the responsible magistrate, right? It could be originally even some still not explicit names like an anchor, the prow of a ship, the victory, a hammer, the point of a lance, stuff like that. And later on, the symbols were substituted, as in this case, with letters or monograms that are the initials of the magistrate. Now, we don't, in this case with, for example, the GEM here, we don't really, I mean, we don't have any explicit mention of Geminus, right? We usually guess, but this tells you how few things can be traced for in this times technically. But at the time, of course, in Rome, they would know who these guys were, right? In particular, the gens Aburia, so this plebeian Roman gens that from this monetary magistrate came from, was were originally devoid even the cognomen, for example, right? The money, the Aburi were known for having used first of all the praenomina actually in Restituta, like Marcus, Gaius, Decimus, right? And they were without a cognomen, as we've said, and the money emitted by this gens in this office often brought the abbreviation gem that probably stays for Geminus, but we don't really know. And eventually, from the 1st century AD, instead, they started acquiring the cognomen Bassus. And yeah, so the thing about the also the phase, the phase that head of Rome, right? In this phase, it was typical, as we've seen, to have on the coins the helmet head of Rome, the helmeted head of Rome, in the obverse, and in the reverse. Initially, we have seen that there were the Oscuri, and then they eventually were alternated with bigas, the guided usually by other deities like Diana, the Victoria, or Jupiter actually, and the use of money as of coins as an instrument of propaganda dates back to the same birth of money. For example, in the Hellenic world, the polis used to represent on the monies the protectors of the city, like Athena, Aquilo, the other some nymphas, or the like Partenopes or Aretuses. And other cities used instead other representative images, like the rose, like for Rhodes, which means Rhodon, the Melitha B for Melite, the other symbols there sometimes are very simple, as you understand. And only in Hellenistic age you start having like living people, like the monarchs of the Macedonian and the successor dynasties, for example. And in Rome, at this point especially, the accent was initially posed on the exaltation of the city in itself. From the second half of the second century BC, the monetary magistrates begin, as in this case instead, to exalt the gens of belonging, and they produce this new representation. And there were these figures, the Roman magistrates known as the tres viri monetales, so the three monetary. We'll see now what that means etymologically speaking. Men who had certain executive tasks that were proposed to the control, in fact, of minting, right, of monetary emission. And the office of monetary magistrate was one of the offices of the vigintiviratus, right? So these were basically offices of lesser responsibility that allowed eventually to access the further steps of the cursus honorum, and you could enter them around your 25th year of age, right? This office of the tres viri monetales is unknown fundamentally. It was particularly long, presumably, because it was kind of a small thing, but it still was important enough, right? Because the tres viri, or triumviri actually, monetales, were therefore the three young magistrates in charge with the control and the actual running of the mint. So the term came from the seat of their office that was on the Capitolina hill, close to the temple of Iuno Moneta, that we will see in a while. And the temple rose on a incidentally on this horn, like, because the Capitol hill is is in turn, like, it has two horns. In the middle there is a kind of a small valley known as the Axillum, and from one side there is the temple of Jupiter. So in this horn that originally was dedicated to Saturn and eventually to Jupiter, and from the other side instead, so from at the northeast end of the hill, where eventually there was the imperial road, and also the Campus Martius began, like the marshy flat line at the base of the capital, stood instead the temple of Iuno Moneta, that stood there from the, had been built basically after the famous episode of the nocturnal assault of the Gauls, that were the G's that allowed to alarmed the Roman guards that had allegedly fallen asleep. I mean, it's a legend, but it's important that allowed to save the city. So in memory of this episode, the temple to Iuno had been built, because Iuno was called in Latin moneta, so that is her who admonishes, so from monere, right? And therefore the one who alerts and that guards over, protects the city in this sense. So the official denomination of these magistrates was the full one: tres viri monetales, aere, argento, auro, or argento actually, auro, flando, feriundo, right? That is synthesized. It's in a concise form, in like I VIRAAAFF, so that's what it came. And which means the three monetary men to cast, to mint, actually, I mean, to melt flando, that's what it means, and to cast feriundo, aere, which means bronze, silver, and gold, uh, auro, right? And silver is argento, as we have said. And the tasks were multiple. These magistrates were responsible of the molding of the golden ingots, of the leagues, of the weight, and of the engravings on the casted coins, and also of the account of the mint, right? So the responsibility was surely great, but it didn't require particularly complex decisions, and therefore was apt to the young men who were at the beginning of their own political career. And in order to document their own responsibility, the emitted coins were signed. Now, the other two smaller coins are actually very interesting as well. So, the first one is dated to, I've been told here, the 20s and the 30s of the 5th century AD, but I suspect it's wider. Like the donor is trying to be more specific. I don't know whether he had some element more to date them back, but it's essentially from the reign of Theodosius II. This is very interesting, as he reigned from, as you know, he died in 450, and he was Roman Emperor of the eastern half of the empire from 408. And he was famous, here I'm told, by my donor, as he was the most common emperor that we issued this type of coins, specifically with the characteristics we'll see now. That is basically the cross within breadth, right, on the reverse. And so the image actually of this on the obverse should be in fact Theodosius himself, right? But there are types like this also under the Valentinian III, while Honorius and Arcadius too have types depicting cross with legion around, he writes. So this is very interesting as well. And what makes it even more interesting is that here on the reverse, under the cross here, you can see the initials SMKP, which stand for Sacra Moneta Kyzikos. So meaning that this coin was struck in the mint of Kyzikos, that I'm told was the largest of the time, one of the largest of the time, at least. Kyzikos is in the Propontis Peninsula, is just in front of the Marmara River, so basically very close to Constantinople, but from the Asian side. And the B actually stands for second workshop, right? Because there were two workshops in this mint. So this is really great. And on the obverse instead, you can see the initial, the writing DN Theodosius PF AV G, which basically stands Dominus Noster Theodosius Pius Felix Augustus, right? And you can see here the cross within the wreath we were talking about before, and an X in jewel at the top of the wreath. And this is very interesting. Now the other coin now is very interesting, because this seems similar, right? And it is actually an imitation coin of none less than the Vandalic Kingdom, right? At least it seems these are dated to the Vandalic Kingdom. I was being told that there are similarities also we'll see it more in detail actually, because there are similarities with the local. This was minted in Carthage, right, where the mint was, and it's fascinating to look at what the continuity in certain characteristic elements exists from the Roman to the Vandalic period, because still this was essentially a Romano-Germanic kingdom at the end of the day. And the main difference here is that there is the same. I suspect this was the same Theodosius, right? So basically, this is trying to imitate the same Roman coins, because obviously this was a strong currency, at least compared to the one of the Vandalic Kingdom. So they imitated it, and they represented the same. And the difference is, though, is that the cross looks much more like symmetric, like what we'd call an orthodox cross, rather. Which and I'm not aware when the Greek cross shaped was differentiated in this sense from the so-called Latin one, that however appears in the first coin, the original Byzantine one, like more of a Latin one. But I read here is that the Vandals had this type of cross that actually was not just symmetric in this sense between the two axes, let's say, of the cross, but also had certain decorations at the extremities, like kind of hooks inwards. Another one is said at the top of the cross upwards, that the donor told me is maybe the representation of a jewel at the top of the wreath around the cross, right? And this is basically what we know. And although I was searching here, there's this Vandal cross shape that in fact is symmetric in this sense, and has this kind of a globe, like it appears in here on the coin. This is what I was talking about. There is a sort of sphere, right? And it turns out this cross is to be found even on other, like in mosaics and in certain clothes that are typical of Vandal Africa, right? So this may represent a sort of variation of the Byzantine design of the cross, or may not, telling the truth, because here the donor says that there are certain coins from Bonifacius from Carthage. It was the Comes of Africa that fought, also died against Aetius, for example. By the way, it was from the beginning of the 5th century, before the Vandal conquest. So the donor was suggesting that it's possible, maybe not a feature of the Vandals themselves. It may be something that was found elsewhere, but the form of the cross and these other elements may be or may not be, I don't know, something more Vandalic in character. I don't know myself, telling the truth, so I'm just wondering. And yes, so this is the greatest, and it's amazing for me to think that this stuff comes from those times and places. Like we talked very much. We made a video on the Vandals, incidentally, and thinking that I would own a coin that comes from that time and space. This could be, by the way, dated. The Vandal one could be between the 5th and the beginning of the 6th century. I mean, throughout all the existence of the Vandalic Kingdom in Africa, right? So I don't think there are many other ways to date them practically. Nevertheless, this is amazing, and as I was saying before, we can't just think about the history of this coin. Like, who knows through how many stories it passed, who used it, who minted it, where it traveled, right? And this is very, very emotional for me, right? And now I will have to take care of these coins in the proper way, because the donor warned me and told me, there is an important thing that here I contained this. I stirred the coins in this plastic bag, which, however, are not meant for long-term coin storage, right? He writes, plastic softeners can damage the patina, and that, quote, bronze and copper coins can develop the so-called bronze disease. It is a reversible cyclic reaction of copper, chloride, and water. This is an air moisture. So the drier environment is the better. And Theodosius' coin had this bronze disease. I've treated it with baking soda soaking, drying, and application of mineral oil. And if it is still slightly greasy, it will dry away. I don't know, frankly, because I don't know here. I'm even, worried now about handling that with human fat. With medieval manuscripts, seemingly that's positive, because it kind of doesn't make them dry out and that kind of breaking, because in the fat kind of sustains their structure, their flexing. Here with the coins, I don't really know, and I suspect it doesn't do to them particularly good, but it's also probably not very destructive by itself. So here I feel responsible for how I will deal with them. And here he warns me also, saying that the bronze disease is away now, but the affected areas are vulnerable until the new patina develops, right? So yeah, thank you very much for this advice as well. It's very useful. I don't know how to deal with that. I will ask him how to cope with them now, and I will store them. I don't know where now. Probably either here or in the living room, and in good exposure, let's say, and in a dry environment, which here it is basically, especially in the living room. And so these are now part of myself, I would say. It's a beautiful memory. They have to do with history. They have to do with Schwerpunkt, and they have to do it with a person who wanted to share them with me and gifted me with them. So it's great, and it means the world to me. And once again, I can't thank the donor enough for it. I just say thanks a lot. I know it's not enough, but it's really meaningful for me. I just want to make it very, very clear. So okay, we have looked enough at them. Actually, I'm recording because I tried to record with video, but they have to do something with the audio montage. Sometimes I have to cut here and there something stupid I say. So basically, I'm recording this, and eventually I'm filming what you will actually be seeing now. So following my voice, illustrating the coins, right? So alright, maybe the initial part about the Denarius was a bit too slow, because also I learned this stuff very, very recently now in order to make this video. But I hope it was interesting, because at least it gives you even a visual idea of how this stuff is, and how beautiful it is to watch, and how many details you can find, especially if you zoom on them, if you look at every single detail, and they're really beautiful, right? And I can't even say the most favorite is the Denarius, because it's obviously more beautiful than the other two, but they're all equally important to me, because of their historical value, and this is what truly matters to me at the end of the day. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that maybe one day we'll look at something else. I never felt the need up to now to make certain animated videos. There is the one, when I went to Poland and I took off with the plane, I wanted to show you, and because I had brought the picture of von Clausewitz with me, and I filmed that while the plane was taking off. And this is the second one, and yeah, I hope it was at least slightly more entertaining than the rather boring average of my videos. And so thanks again to the person who knows what, and thanks to you also for the general support that it's like a great wave, right? This gift is the pinnacle of the support that you showed to me, and I sense that there are people who will contact me and say, well, thank you. There is a guy that wrote me the last week, I think. I mean, he came straight. He told me straight. I just started. You basically inspired me to start a historical study at university, right? And obviously, he had other reasons as well. He didn't tell me, but he felt the need to tell me like this. And there is now a person who's starting that path, for example, because he said, "I liked your videos. I watched them, and I do this." And I read that, and that also means the world to me. Like, I have no words. I hoped such things would. I hoped, of course, that Schwerpunkt could make a change. But when you actually hear a person telling you such thing, you always even even feel guilty, because they say, "Well, my God, maybe I destroyed this person's life." I hope not. I hope not. I wish him all the best, and I'm sure he will do great as well. But just for saying that, these are things that impress me deeply, right? These are really things, gifts like this. These beautiful coins are things that can change one's life, because who knows, from these coins one day maybe I will get more interested into them. Maybe I will start some more, a new part of my life will start from this. So I don't know. Well, it's just time can tell that. And for now, let's stop it here. I won't say the usual thing at this time. I will just say thanks, and I wish you a nice. Here it's evening, but here, well, wherever you are, so good whatever your morning, your afternoon, your evening, your night is, and see you next time. Bye.